My name is Hugh Morrissey, and I've been asked to give a testimony as to answer to prayer. And so there are so many you could choose from, but I've chosen two. And so these two prayer requests or prayers that were answered were things that no one else could have had any outside force in other than the power of God. The first one was my mother praying for me. Now, I was working on a construction site. I was only about 15 years old. They were building a bridge across the creek in Weldon. And when the first I-beam went across the span, it was dropped into place, and I was right there. So I stepped out onto this I-beam and started walking towards the center of it to unhook the cable. Well, I stepped onto it without really thinking because I'm not real fond of heights, and I can't swim, there's water below. And so I got out there very carefully and disconnected the cable. Well, I went on the rest of my day. I got home that evening, and as soon as I come through the door, my mother said to me, "What were you doing at 12 o'clock today?" And of course, that's right when I stepped out onto that I-beam, and she would have no way of knowing that. And she said, "I had the strongest urge to pray for you at that period than at any other time in your life." And so I knew, even as an unsaved person at that point, that there was a power at work that sustained me and protected me that day. So another prayer request, or a prayer, I should say, that was answered, that as well would have had no other outside force, involved my son. Barb and I have a son named Jonathan. He's a special needs guy. He has epilepsy. He's autistic. He had several challenges throughout his life. And so as a little boy, we bought him a bicycle. And so we could never get him to ride that bicycle. We could set him on it, and we could push him around, but as soon as we let go, he would get right off the bicycle and just push the bicycle. Well, that went on for years and years and years. You could never get him to ride the bicycle. And then one time, the Spirit of God was really dealing with me about fasting and praying. And so I always kind of made the judgment that I can't fast because I work with my hands and need my energy. But God made it pretty clear to me that, no, you can indeed fast. So I got into a time of fasting, and I saw in the scripture where this father had this son who was also epileptic, and he was brought to the disciples and then to Jesus for healing, and very, very similar to what Jonathan's situation was. So I chose a week to fast and pray, and I began to pray for Jonathan. And so Jonathan at that point was living in a group home in Moncton, and they certainly would not have known that I was praying for Jonathan, certainly would not have known that I was fasting and praying for him. But that very week, for the first time in his life, Jonathan was outside, swung his leg over the bicycle, and drove it unaided to the convenience store. Now, you might call that coincidence, but I find that when you stop praying, coincidences stop happening. I'll give you another one just quickly. I had a man come to our home one evening for a Bible study, and he was in tears, concerned for his brother, who was a severe alcoholic and had been for many, many years. And so I remember that evening taking the verse of Scripture that says, "If two of you shall agree as touching any one thing, it shall be done for them of my Father which is in heaven." And so as Basil Campbell and I took that scripture together and prayed for his brother to be delivered from alcohol, the next week when he came back telling me that his brother had been delivered from alcohol, and to my knowledge has never gone back to that again. Now, those are three very specific prayers, and in all three cases, there was no outside force. None of these people knew that there was prayer going on for them, but to God be the glory, prayer was answered.